Victorians have finally exited lockdown as our country begins a new chapter in learning to live with the virus. The move comes nearly 2 weeks after Sydney emerged from lockdown after both states decided on a gradual reopening predicated on a 70% vaccination target. Now, you would think that these commonalities in process would unite our media class, who at times have appeared divided based on state lines. But there have been jarring differences in the way that many in the media have covered both openings. Now, New South Wales, led by a Conservative government, copped a lashing from progressive voices when it dared cut restrictions despite recording 498 cases that day.
Chief Health Officer Kerry Chant was noted for her absence from Dominic Perrottet's news conference today. And some health experts are feeling nervous about the new approach at a very delicate time in navigating the continuing COVID outbreak in the state.
Your predecessor, Gladys Berejiklian, warned that cases would go through the roof. Her words when this happened, this day came. Are you still expecting that?
Well, Michael, I'm obviously expecting them to increase as mobility increases across the state.
Try to get an answer on this. So Gladys Berejiklian was pretty candid on talking about through the roof. That is talking about a big increase. No leader, can they, Dominic Perrottet, rule out lockdowns in the future in the uncertain age of COVID?
But in Victoria, which recorded 2,235 new cases the day before lockdown ended, the coverage seemed much more positive.
The state recorded 1,838 cases and 7 deaths yesterday. Is it safe for Victoria to reopen as it is?
Well, there will be hospitalisations and that will continue. It is a large number of cases, but you can't really hold on much longer.
Modelling done for the Victorian government last month predicted a huge surge in demand for hospital beds. But the admissions haven't been as high as predicted, and the length of time people are staying in hospital is also much lower than expected. Those factors, combined with a rapidly rising vaccination rate, have been enough for the government to bring forward the end of lockdown by several days.
Given that Victoria's daily case numbers are 4 times what New South Wales was experiencing at the time, the ABC was now downplaying the danger of reopening. And Michael Rowland, who was drilling Perrottet about cases supposedly going through the roof if New South Wales reopened, was now tweeting this about Victoria. 5 hours to go. As a Melburnian and a Victorian, I am just so proud of this city and this state. We have been through so much. Thank you to our healthcare workers, whose job is far from over. You all rock. Tomorrow will be a very happy day. All Victorians deserve it. Now, I can't help but notice a stark difference in the way the ABC covers a Labor government compared to a Conservative one. Not convinced? Have a listen to this discussion on the ABC earlier this month, fearmongering that Perrottet's changes would kill people.
New South Wales will emerge from lockdown faster than initially planned, with new Premier Dominic Perrottet announcing changes to the roadmap on just his 2nd day in the job.
Changes that are made here result in more deaths that are completely avoidable. Does it make sense to do? Again, we need and will be getting back to normal. But this is very short-term stuff. We just have to wait till more people are vaccinated.
But on Monday, the day after Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews announced lockdown would end, it barely rated a mention.
Victoria will emerge from lockdown 5 days earlier than planned as the state's vaccine rollout continues to surpass expectations. Case numbers are still high, with more than 1,900 recorded today. But stay-at-home orders will lift at 11:59 p.m. this Thursday, when the state hits the 70% double-dose rate.
Well, the only thing passing expectations is the rising case numbers, which for the record are a much greater indication of hospitalisations and death rates. And on the project, it was much the same.
Although listening to that press conference today, Danielle, it does sound like Dominic Perrottet has more of a focus on the economy than he does on the health.
Look, certainly today was of concern to us. The breadth and scope of today's changes really did take us by surprise.
Victoria's lockdown is lifting early from midnight on Thursday, Melburnians, and some regional residents will regain hard-won freedoms, including home visits, indoor dining for the vaccinated and unrestricted metro travel. Watch out, Tommy will be on the loose. The move will coincide with Victoria hitting 70% double vax. Congratulations, everyone, earlier than predicted.
giving it to the New South Wales Premier and glossing over Victoria's mistakes. And when Victoria's mistakes are too obvious to ignore, partisan hacks like The Guardian's Catherine Murphy and the ABC's Norman Swan try to flip the blame back to a Conservative government.
Non-COVID states too really need this to work, don't they?
Well, everybody needs it to work. I mean, that's the bottom line. You know, the Delta outbreak that started in New South Wales had major implications, you know, all up and down the eastern seaboard. And
also, that remember, this is a New South Wales, failure of quarantine in New South Wales. This is the cause of the Victorian outbreak.
Well, let's bring in the panel. I'm joined by media writer at The Australian, Sophie Ellsworth, and host of the Kenny Report, Chris Kenny. Chris, let's start with you. I know you've been keeping a very close eye on how this issue has been reported, both in New South Wales and in Victoria. How have you made of the way that the ABC has covered it?
Yeah, that was a great summary, Jack. Great to be on the show. Look, what a miserable, intellectually bereft, juvenile bunch these leftist journalists are. They just can't stick to an argument. They can't stick to facts. They change it all the time just to suit their partisan politics. I mean, going back a few months when Daniel Andrews and these media supporters were catastrophising the deaths of 90-year-olds from COVID in palliative care, yet now they're all out jumping up and down and celebrating when they take off the lockdown with 2,000 infections and 16 deaths. I mean, there's just no consistency from these people. Remember, just a couple of months ago, they were all screaming at Gladys Berejiklian, saying she needed to do a tougher, harder lockdown like Melbourne. Melbourne was the template. Well, of course, again, New South Wales showed the way, and Melbourne just has failed to do anything with its lockdown, yet they just pretend all that away. And there's no, the only consistency in their reporting of COVID, and remember, this is a big public health issue where the facts should matter, but the only consistency from these leftist journalists, especially at the ABC, has been that they've supported Daniel Andrews and his Labor government in Victoria all the way through, no matter what they've done, when they've been wrong, when they've been right, when they've completely backflipped on their strategy, they've always supported Daniel Andrews. It's so transparent and so dishonest.
Yeah, and Sophie, I think the one thing I'd add to that is it's shameless the way that I think they figure the public just has a short memory, just doesn't remember what they said a few weeks prior.
Jack, it's insulting, quite frankly. Having lived in Melbourne during these lockdowns that just continue and continue, we've seen, as Chris says, consistent reporting from the ABC, pretty much backing in Daniel Andrews. I mean, he's almost their hero. He can do no wrong. Now, you had a grab there also from Lisa Wilkinson on the project. She said that Gladys Berejiklian should have resigned throughout this and that she totally stuffed the COVID pandemic. Now, I haven't heard her criticise Daniel Andrews, and I'm waiting for her to call him out, given we've got over 2,000 cases a day. I think people can see through this reporting, though, Jack. They're not stupid. The media are treating some of the public like they are stupid, but people down here are really fed up, and I think they're fed up with the media being soft on Daniel Andrews in a lot of forms, in terms of from the ABC. There's only been a few outlets, such as the Herald Sun, Sky and the Australian, that have really held him to account throughout this entire pandemic.
Yeah, it's the most locked down city in the world, Melbourne. So it's great that they're getting out, but I think they deserve better than a media class that is just simply a cheerleader service.